Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage from the Automation Federation, cybersecurity expert, Steve Mustard.
Morning, everyone. For those of you just coming in from the casino, hope you did well. We're going to talk about cybersecurity today, and hopefully the slides will appear in a moment. Oh. It's my wife's name followed by, no. Okay, so yeah, I'm an automation professional specializing in cybersecurity. I'm a volunteer with the Automation Federation, and if you don't know, the Automation Federation is a non-profit that works with other organizations like NRWA to help improve things like workforce competency and industrial cybersecurity. So as I said, we're going to talk about cybersecurity today. Clicker doesn't work, so it's been hacked. No? Oh, okay. There you go. All right, so I'm pretty sure you've all been to conferences and talked about cybersecurity, and I'm sure some of you are tired of hearing about it. So I'm going to hopefully not talk about the same things over and over again that you've heard many times before, but I am going to talk about the importance of awareness of cybersecurity. Like you saw in the videos earlier, the biggest factor with cybersecurity is not the technology, that's important, but the biggest factor, as you saw, is people and their awareness of what they're doing and being careful about not providing information to people. So, Benjamin Franklin said there's only two things that are certain, death and taxes. So in this day and age, I'm going to add another thing, which is you are going to be affected by a cybersecurity incident. It absolutely will happen to you at some point, there's no doubt about that. The only things that will vary are how badly you get affected, if you get actually impacted by it, what it does to you, and what the consequences are for you. But you will be affected if you haven't already been affected. So it's something we need to be conscious of all the time. And obviously with incidents like Equifax, only recently we're aware that this sort of stuff is happening day after day, and it's a constant, relentless effort to try and do something about it. So if your organization doesn't really understand cybersecurity and doesn't really understand the risks to the organization, don't worry, because you're not the only ones. There's actually very few organizations that really pay proper attention to cybersecurity and really understand the risks that they face. As we saw with Equifax, an organization which is entirely about keeping people's personal information secure, even they can't get it right. So, you know, what hope does anyone else have if their organization can't do it properly? But your organizations can do a lot to make a big difference, and that's what we want to talk about today. So one of the common things I get when I talk to organizations about industrial cybersecurity is, don't worry, you don't need to tell us anything about that. We've already looked into it, and we've sorted it because we've disconnected ourselves from the internet. I don't really know what that means. I think in some cases it means we've disconnected the SCADA system from the internet, and okay, that's a step you can take, and that reduces a risk that you have to do with cybersecurity. But your organizations don't just have SCADA systems. If you're getting email, if you're accessing websites, if you're getting billing information, if you've got meter systems, if you've got GIS, if you've got any other kind of access to the internet, you are doing stuff and you are vulnerable to cyber incidents. Disconnecting the SCADA system is only going to help you with one particular issue, which is people getting access to your SCADA system from the internet. In fact, if you do need access to the SCADA system because you need to get access remotely for some reason, then maybe your guys come up with another way to get access to it using something like TeamViewer, which is even less secure than what you had before. So disconnecting is not really an approach. It's an approach, but it's not really the solution, and it's a bigger problem than that. Another thing that I get commonly, especially with smaller organizations, is we're not worried about cybersecurity because we're not really a target. If you think about Equifax, it's an obvious target because it has a lot of valuable information that people will want to get. So you can understand why hackers would want to get access to them. But if you're a small water municipality somewhere with just a few computers and a tiny SCADA system, obviously you can't see why anyone would want to attack you. But cybersecurity attacks are not necessarily about being targeted. As we see with ransomware, they are completely random. They just go out on the internet and they want to infect machines so that they can charge you a ransom to uninfect the machine. It doesn't matter what the machine is, it doesn't matter where it is, and it doesn't matter what it's doing. So you are vulnerable to that sort of thing. And if you don't know what is on your computers and you don't know what the impact would be if you don't get access to those computers, then you've got a serious problem when it does happen. So one approach that is common, if you've got the money, is to spend a lot of money on IT equipment. So you can get some IT consultants in and you can talk to them and they can say, we can fix all of your problems by putting lots of IT equipment in, like firewalls and routers and stuff. And as I said, that is a valid approach to mitigating some of the risks of cybersecurity. But ultimately, even with all that technology, just like Equifax, you can still be vulnerable. And in the case of Equifax, it was because they didn't keep their machines up to date. In the case of other organizations, like you see, it's because people in the organization do stupid things. They give people access willingly, trusting them because they don't think about it. So no amount of technology is going to fix that particular problem if your people aren't aware of the risks that they create themselves. So, you know, phishing, the way of sending emails out to people, making it look like it came from a valid source, asking for information, that's a real big problem. And, you know, something like 95% of emails today is spam related, and a vast majority of those are phishing emails. Some of them are from Nigerian princes asking you to make a donation and then you can be rewarded vastly when he cashes the check. And clearly, I would hope no one in the room believes those ones. But on the other end of the scale, you've got the examples like we saw in the videos, where you've got people who create very realistic emails, and it's hard to tell whether it's real or not. But we all need to think carefully about it, about where the request is coming from, why they're requesting it, and making double sure before we do anything that we're doing the right thing. Just a simple phone call to the person might be sufficient to overcome the uncertainty. So there's a famous saying which is, on the internet, no one knows you're a dog. And this is another problem which you may come across. If your organization has, for instance, an IT partner that provides IT services for you, either on the SCADA system or some of your other equipment, you're giving them access to your system so that they can maintain them for you, keep them up to date, back them up, and such like. But do you know who is actually doing that? And do you know who has got access? Do you know why they've got access? Do you know when they've got access and what they're doing? And if you don't, you should be worried about that. And what do you do when one of those employees gets fired because they did something wrong? Not too long ago in Pennsylvania, a guy who worked for a meter radio company got fired, and he spent his next few months being drunk, complaining about it. And he had access to all of the systems, and he hacked into them, and actually he just logged into them legitimately, and he changed the radio frequencies, he interrupted the communications with all kinds of meter systems, and he didn't even hide it. Because he was so drunk, he didn't even bother to hide where he was doing it from, and he was caught. But he had all that information, and when he got fired, no one changed the passwords, no one made sure that he shouldn't have access, and he made the most of it. So I said that technology is important, and it's not the only thing, but there are some areas where technology is really important. So if you're still running Windows 95, please update it. And if you're still wearing those shorts, please update those too. But seriously, especially in the industrial world, it's very common to have old technology in place because it works, and why do we want to update it if it's working? Because it's only going to not work in future with less reliable software. But the reality is that those things have loads of security holes in them, and they are well-known security holes, and they're exploited by everybody. And if you've got that kind of stuff, and then you've got some way to access that, and it doesn't have to be on the internet. Remember, if you take a USB drive and you plug it into the computer, you can still infect that machine with some malware, or you can still create some problems. So it's not about connecting this stuff to the internet, it's about keeping it up to date and keeping it free from vulnerabilities. So the last couple of things is that you have to also think about the time it takes to do this stuff, and you've got a lot of work to do. And now I'm telling you, you've got some more work you have to do, which is every time you do something, you need to back it up, and every time you use a USB drive, you're going to need to do some virus scanning, and all takes time, and you haven't really got time to do that, and you never had a problem with it. So why do we really need to bother? But of course, when you do have a problem and you don't have that backup, then you're going to be very disappointed that you didn't do that, and it's too late at that point. Same goes with the virus scanning. Even I am guilty of not virus scanning things at home when I have a USB drive, but I know I should do, and I certainly have to do it at work. So I would encourage you to do that. When someone comes in with a USB drive, they want to print something out on your printer, or they want to update some software, you need to be sure where that came from, and you need to check it before it goes into anywhere. So what I would encourage you is that myself and people like myself have spent a long time looking into this sort of stuff, and we've learned a lot of things. And as I said, I've focused on awareness. The technology is important, but I've focused on making people aware of the issues and helping them to be better at doing the right things. So there's a lot of tips that you can learn from people about what you should do. We're not talking about spending millions of dollars on technology. We're talking about spending some time with the people who work in your organizations and helping them understand what the problems might be and what they should do about them. So one of the things we've been working with the NRWA is with ISA, which is another member of the Automation Federation. It's the International Society of Automation. We've created a custom training course for NRWA members, which focuses on what you need to be aware of with industrial cybersecurity, running through how to do risk assessment in your organization, and what to look for, and the key cyber hygiene things that you should encourage your people to do. It's a day and a half, and the first one of those is being run in November, November 1-2 in Raleigh at the Automation Federation headquarters. It's actually going to be just before the NRWA's board meeting, which is going to be held there too. And so I would encourage you to take a look at that. There's a flyer on this, which you can get at the Automation Federation booth. It's the one with the dice and the cards. So if you haven't already got the dice and the cards, go ahead and do that. The dice are loaded, so you should do well tonight if you use those. Also the training course, ISA runs these training courses, and they do them either at their own facility or they run them externally for organizations. So for state associations, even if you don't have the time to send the people in November, if it's something you want to do, feel free to talk to the Automation Federation guys at the booth, because they can talk to you about organizing one for your state association next year. So that's all I had to say. I hope that the rest of the conference goes well. I hope you don't fall victim to a cyber attack today, but I will be around for a few hours, so keep an eye out. And I hope you found that interesting, and hope to see you again soon.